You're listening to the Career Jump Podcast. Insights, interviews, and success stories to inspire and give you the edge when you make your next career jump. Hosted by your career concierge, Andrew MacAskill.
Hello, welcome to the Executive Career Jump Podcast. I'm your host and career concierge, Andrew MacAskill. And I'm delighted today to be joined by Natalie Louise. How are you doing, Natalie?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, we're very, very well indeed. I'm really excited to have Natalie on because we've had a lot of career coaches, we've had HR people, but one thing we haven't gone into depth on is the wellness side. And Natalie's a sleep and nutrition expert who I followed for a long time. I love the work that she's doing. So I'm looking forward to hearing some of your top tips today. Just for people that haven't come across you before or don't currently follow you online, can you just give us a bit of an introduction in terms of your story and the type of work that you get involved with, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a nutritional therapist. I'm actually a naturopathic nutritional therapist. So what that means is really that I approach health from a naturopathic and functional medicine perspective, which really means that we look at the body as a whole. The body is constantly talking to each other. Every system in the body is connected. And we take symptoms and we view them as feedback from the body to tell us where imbalances lie and what might be going on for you that's then impacting on your health and driving these symptoms that are impacting on your everyday. But that's just my recent story. My history is very much in corporate world. I spent 10 years in corporate world in the City of London as a marketeer, focused very much on the fintech sector, which, as we know, has just been constantly rising, and innovation in that area and the business trajectory in that area has just been going up. So it's been a stressful 10 years. It's been something that's taught me a lot of lessons, and it's actually been a big part of why I do what I do now.
Yeah, so tell us a bit more about that. How did this interest in health and wellness develop, and what kind of prompted you to take the leap and to move your career in that direction?
Yeah, sure. So during that 10 years, aside from my own experience of feeling exhausted, struggling with digestive issues, bloating, getting frequent migraines, I went from someone who never had migraines to having migraines probably every few months, and fluctuating weight as well. There was that was in me, the issues that I was experiencing, that I was getting frustrated with, and just also having no time to sort it out. There was never any time for me to actually prioritize myself. But I also watched everybody around me. I watched how we sort of surviving on coffee and sugary snacks to get through the day, and then trying to wind down afterwards in the pub with alcohol, and then doing it all again the next day. And between that, not really sleeping particularly well and not really finding time to exercise. I started to sort of take a bit of a backseat and look at it all and try and sort of take myself out of it and think, actually, what is going on here? I don't feel great. What I'm witnessing doesn't particularly look very effective or constructive for a decent health and for a good work-life balance. What's playing a role in people's health decline? And we watch the stats from a nation perspective. Diabetes is on the rise, obesity is on the rise, heart disease continues to go up. We see 450 people a day die from heart disease in this country. It's tragic. And there was no way of me separating that correlation then in regards to what I'm seeing every day, what I'm experiencing, the way that we're living our lives in these very stressful environments, and the way we're seeing health change in this country, unfortunately not for the better. So the two just really came together for me and collided. And my own experience with Western medicine, going to see the GP, unfortunately hasn't always been a particularly positive one. I struggled previously in my late teens with mental health conditions and was just given drugs, which unfortunately gave me more side effects and just pushed me further down a very negative path. So that paired with what I was seeing, I didn't want to go back down that route. I wanted to really look at actually what can we do for ourselves? How do we take back control? How do we start looking into how we're living our lives, how we're eating, how we're exercising, how we're thinking, how we're sleeping, how we're managing this stress and this pressure, and the impact that that's going to have on our health. And that's what led me to go back into education, open up a book and study for just over 3 years to become a nutritional therapist.
Awesome. Absolutely love that. And a lot of what you talk about that really resonates and I think is interesting is how it's all interconnected. You seem to take a very holistic, interconnected view of it all. Whereas I think a lot of people try and separate all of these different things in terms of work, stress, sleep, nutrition, fitness. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you see, holistically it all interconnecting with each other?
Yeah, sure. So really, these things they do all work together. You can, of course, focus on individual ones, but what you'll find is that you never really complete the full picture. So if you just go out and exercise a little bit more, you might find that you then start to lose a little bit of weight because you're expending more energy than you're consuming. But you may still find that you're exhausted and that your digestive issues haven't resolved. So that's just one piece of the puzzle. You can then focus on nutrition, and we can look at actually making sure you've got a right nutrient balance. We're balancing your blood sugars. We see this roller coaster of blood sugars throughout the day, which leaves you with these peaks of energy and then these exhaustive moments. And that really has a big impact from a health perspective. So we could look at balancing that and balancing nutrient levels and really supporting your digestive system if that's an area to work on, for example. But something like stress will always override that. So if we're in huge amounts of stress, you're going to struggle to manage your digestive system. And if we look at it, the way we look at it holistically is the way that we should look at it with science, is that when we're in that fight and flight mode, that state of stress, the body does not prioritize digestion. So things like stomach acid, something that's so key for breaking down food, will not be present, or will not be present in the amounts that you need for adequate digestion. So then you end up with all these other different issues. So we need to look at then stress, and actually how do we manage stress and bring that down? How do we look at that around your eating windows so that we can really support your digestion and you can digest and absorb the nutrients that you're eating? Because if we don't absorb them, then what was the point? And then we go back and looking at sleep, because it's such an underrated thing that we see in our lives. We deprioritize it. We have this horrible phrase, we'll sleep when we're dead, which the truth is, death will come quicker if we don't sleep. That's the truth of it. And we're encouraging people to sleep for a third of their lives. And if we look at why, we look at actually everything that the body does during sleep. So the brain starts to store memories, it starts to reprogram, it starts to get ready for another day. The stress response actually takes a break while we sleep. So it's actually a form of de-stressing. And we get ready to be able to have a stress response the next day, which is important, because if we don't have that, we actually can't get up in the morning. So it's that nice balance. And we look at the impact that lack of sleep has from a metabolic condition. If we're going to look at metabolic conditions for this particular example, if we don't sleep well, we do see an increase in hypertension, blood pressure. We do see an increase in weight. We see a disruption in regards to energy balance. So people don't tend to be able to manage their intake of energy particularly well because of the hormone disruption. And it can go on and on. I could talk about this for hours, but these are just small things of showing how each of them really matter, because none of them will override the other. We've all heard you can't out exercise a bad diet, but you can't do that with sleep or with stress either. None of these things can be brushed under the carpet.
Yeah, totally. And I've always struggled with sleep, like many people, just to switch off. I'm one of those 4:30 wake up and then can't get back to sleep type people. And then you get frustrated because you've only had maybe 5.5 hours instead of the 7.5 to 8 that you were aiming for. Give us some tips in terms of, how we can set ourselves up to sleep better, sleep hygiene. These kind of topics I think are really, really interesting. I'd love to hear your take on your experience on that.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite topics, and it's what I really love working with clients for, because we see that when you don't sleep, the impact it has on your day. We see it with new parents, when you're managing young babies, the impact that has on parents. But we see it with us as well in corporate life. You're gonna struggle to be effective the next day. You're gonna struggle to make good decisions. You're gonna struggle to have clarity. And then even if we're going to look at your nutrition as well, you're going to struggle there. You're going to struggle to make good decisions and actually build the time out to make a good meal. So I love working with people with sleep, because if we can get that in order, the rest of it can fall into place a lot easier. But it starts in the morning. If we want to really look at sleep, it starts first thing in the morning, and getting good daylight into the eyes first thing in the morning. It helps to balance our circadian rhythm, which is that internal body clock. And we want to see an internal body clock looking a particular way because that's how we get adequate sleep. So sunlight first thing in the morning. At this time of year, it's wonderful. We can go outside, take your coffee outside, put your feet in the grass, and just really embrace the natural light. In the winter, I really encourage the use of the SAD lamps, the SAD lamps. They actually use them in the Nordic. They actually have work. I think they have to pull them into offices because of the lack of daylight. So starting with that. And then throughout the day, really thinking about blood sugar balance. We need to think about having 3 good meals a day where we incorporate proteins, good fats, good healthy fats, and quality carbohydrates. And by those, I'm thinking about really good vegetables because they're full of fiber. They've got really good carbohydrates. And I'm thinking about the complex carbohydrates like the whole grains and the wild rice, the quinoa, the sweet potato, root vegetables. So if we think about balancing our 3 meals across the day, then we've got nice balanced blood sugars, because this disruption, this roller coaster that not only impacts our everyday, this continues when we go to sleep. And a dip can be what wakes you up. And that can be the disruption of sleep. It stimulates cortisol when we do have this roller coaster. So it stimulates that stress response. That's going to wake you up. And then when we go to bed, when we're thinking about that end part of the day, we've got to consider something that we see and that you and I are using currently at the moment, which is screen time. When we are using laptops or watching TV or using our mobile phones or an iPad, whether you're gaming, the blue light that gets emitted by these products, and even by artificial light when we're thinking about lamps and things, the blue light that gets emitted and that we take in through our eyes suppresses the production of melatonin, which is our sleep hormone. So we need to be thinking about, actually during the day, we take in a lot, especially when you're working on a computer. Let's really find a segment of the evening where we can stop the screen time. And I always encourage that as being the hour before you go to bed. Of course, we often want to sit down in the evening and enjoy maybe a bit of social media or enjoy a TV program as a part of our wind down. But that hour before we go to bed, we need to cut that off, allow melatonin to start producing, dim the lights. I talk about it as well as about dimming the environmental noise. We have so much noise every day. There's pings on our phone and our laptop, the TV's on, the radio's on, the kids are screaming, it's a bit constant. We want to really dim that down to enable the stress response to lower, the resting to really come in, the melatonin to start producing. And so thinking about nice baths, reading a book, turning down the lights, candles, just like you would do with a baby. When we're teaching children how to sleep, we don't throw them in front of the TV and turn on loud noises and start screaming and shouting. We wouldn't never expect to then have a good night's sleep. That lovely routine we do with children, there's never a part of our lives where the body doesn't want that routine. So I really think about putting that in the hour before bed, turning off screens and really dulling down the noise and resting. And then when you do go to bed, thinking about that environment. Technology outside the bedroom is a big one for me. I do not invite mobile phones into the bedroom. If your alarm is on, it can be on airplane mode. It can sit outside the bedroom or by the bedroom door and you'll still hear it, or you can get an old-fashioned alarm clock. Open windows, have good circulation of air, make sure it's cool, and then use things like eye masks and pillow sprays and things like that to really encourage a good night's sleep.
Hey everybody, it's Andrew here. Just wanted to very briefly interrupt this podcast episode to tell you a little bit more about our Career Jump Club. So our Career Jump Club was created to help job seekers understand what they want and how to get it, right? So becoming a club member is a great move if you're looking to get the clarity and confidence in order to secure your next role. With the membership, you get a number of different things. So first thing you get is access to our online platform, which has over 30 videos, 40, 50 different templates, workbooks, and it takes you through everything from sort of understanding what you want to how to position your CV and LinkedIn, how to interview, how to close offers and negotiate better salaries, a full end-to-end job search course effectively for senior leaders. So you get that, you get a fortnightly group coaching call, which is with me and with the other members, where we bounce around best practice, share slide decks, share techniques, and share the latest data on what's working for people. And you get to, most importantly, become part of our closed LinkedIn group and our closed community. And in there is where the magic often happens, because you get people referring each other into opportunity, supporting each other, and just sharing. And that's what it's all about. So If you're financially able and you'd like to invest in your job search, head on over to www.execcareerjump.com, all one word, /club, and you'll find the landing page and come and give it a go. We'll see you in there. Anyway, back to the pod.
Alarm clocks are a good thing.
Well, yeah, when we see this actually in regards to our sleep-wake cycle to look at. So when we cycle through sleep, we have these 90 minutes, on average, 90 minutes of a sleep cycle. And that's when we rotate through deep sleep, light sleep, REM sleep, which is when we dream, rapid eye movement. And we want to go through these cycles 5-7 times, depending on the person and the age, because our age always depends on how much sleep we need. And actually having an alarm clock go off when you're in something like deep sleep, or when you're in the middle of this sleep cycle can be very disruptive to the body. And it's a bit of a shock. So unfortunately, with our modern worlds, we do need alarm clocks. We have times where we need to get up and go to work. So what I encourage is making sure you've got 8 hours. From the moment your lights go off, assume you need 15 minutes to go to sleep, as long as you've done everything great during the day. And then you've got a good 8 hours to cycle through enough sleep cycles. When the alarm clock goes off, listen to it, respond to it, get up. If you continue to hit the snooze button, you continue to go back into a state of sleep and then shock your body again. That isn't particularly supportive for great health. We don't want to be shocking the body in that response multiple times, especially multiple times within an hour, because you can't help the snooze button, which also really helps, I think, when putting it away from the bed, because you have to get out of bed to turn it off, stay out of bed, be responsive to it. But yeah, there is a disruption there, but it's very difficult to get away from it with our modern life. If, you know, the more you can wake up naturally, which if you set a good bedtime routine of going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time, you will find you begin to wake up naturally and you less rely on the alarm clock, which is definitely a bonus.
Yeah, the snooze button one's a killer, isn't it? Like we've all done that. And it does feel like an interruption, but which is why I asked about alarms, because, so for example, I remember hearing somebody had a ringtone that was my alarm, and it went off in the office whilst I was working, and that sound triggered like a stress response in me, because I associated that sound with being shocked awake and having to get my butt out of bed in the mornings. So it was clear, I wouldn't go as far as saying I was traumatized by it, but it was clear that there was some kind of connection to that interruption that didn't feel positive to me when I heard it in the office. Strange, right?
Yeah, no, it's not, but it's not a positive response, is it? That disruption.
No, it's not. No.
I actually have turned mine, and encouraged my husband to do the same, turned it to bird song. So bird song wakes me up in the morning. It's effective. I still wake up, but I personally feel better for it. I don't feel so disrupted, you know, and even if that's just psychological, fine. I'll take that as a win.
So Natalie's husband's in the military, and I'm just imagining him on tour waking up to birdsong right now, which is a very funny thought.
Yeah, he might change it when he goes away.
I think he might do. But no, really, really good. Another question for you then. Is living a healthy life expensive?
This is a question we see a lot, actually. And I think people can make it expensive. We can make it look very expensive, but there are definitely ways of doing it within all budgets. And this, you become a bit of a battle with the food industry here, because we seem to deem that it's difficult to live a healthy life. It's expensive to live a healthy life, I think, because of the way marketing and the food industry have put it forward to us. But actually the cost of fruits and vegetables are reasonable. And if we look at the prices, I mean, you can go and buy a bag of carrots for less than 50p. So I do then have to wonder, how much is the poor farmer getting paid? So, but that's a whole different conversation. Yeah. But there is, where we deem to see it not as cost effective is because of the things and the way that things are marketed to us. So you can end up buying, a bumper box of crisps that are, a couple of £1, and you can think, well, that's 28 bags of crisps, that's 28 snacks, that's a whole month's worth of snacks for a couple of £1. Great. But actually the value that that's going to give in regards to fueling you and filling you up, then if we look at that, actually really decreases the cost effectiveness. Whereas if we went for something like a bag of apples, 6 apples, which, okay, they can be more like around £1 for 6 apples, but what you're gaining on a nutrient value, on a fiber value, which will fill you up and supportive for your health, suddenly the cost effectiveness is much more increased. And we see a lot more benefits when we think about batch cooking and batch making. When we make things in bulk, then we can really fill ourselves up and fuel ourselves for longer with a much less price. But buying things on the go can really get expensive. It's cheap in the moment, but it can really become expensive if we don't plan meals ahead and start thinking about weeks and what meals can we make, and how can we batch cook to reduce cost. Farmer shops, again, people can see these as quite expensive, but you've got a range of either farmer shops or supermarkets now which can sell produce for really reasonable prices, and there's loads of wonderful resources around of how you can batch cook and and make really good recipes out of them, and you'll find they'll last you for longer. More importantly, it's about filling you up and fueling you for longer and making that cost effective rather than just the price that you see and the initial thought of 28 snacks versus 6. For what it's going to do from a fuel perspective, you'll be full for about half an hour with a bag of crisps. It's not going to be so beneficial. But there is a lot that the food industry need to do to turn this around for us. We do need to see fruit and veg be a lot more pushed as a lot more reasonable and be marketed to us as a lot cheaper, where unfortunately it's not. It's pushed towards the packet goods, and that's not helping us when we're going shopping, and quite often we're rushing around the supermarket, aren't we, just grabbing. So it does take a bit of planning, but it's absolutely doable. Yeah.
Love it. We mentioned earlier about stress. So a lot of the people who listen to our podcast are typically in some kind of career transition, right? So they've either been made redundant, or they've left a previous organization, or they're relocating, and it is one of the most stressful things that you can go through, probably along with house moving and everything else. Like, it's a major upset to your life. Your confidence it's a very painful process for most people, and a grieving process to some extent. What kind of advice would you give to people who are finding themselves stressed, who are in career transition, who are sat at home a lot all day with the fridge in front of them, in terms of some good habits that they could be thinking about to look after themselves so that they perform well in their job search and that they're looking after themselves during that stressful period?
Yeah, my heart really goes out to people who have suffered this, especially the last 18 months. It's been really challenging, and you're doing a great job, Andrew, with everything you're doing. And I'm really thrilled that people have got someone like you to turn to support them, because it is an incredibly stressful time. And I think it goes down as the top 5 stressors when we think about it, along with house move, divorce and weddings. I think divorce and weddings end up in the top 5 together, but it is very stressful. So if we just take a step back and think about things. So when someone says to you, just go and de-stress. Great, thanks. How easy is that? It's hard to do. Let's not take away from the fact that managing stress can be challenging. Our modern day lives are not set up for living a healthy lifestyle. And it pains me to say that, but it's not. Our modern day lives are not set up to be rested and stress-free. So if we look at the fact that this is going to be possibly a challenge, de-stressing is going to be a challenge, integrating de-stress techniques is not going to be easy, then we can just sit there with that reality of the fact that you know that you're going to have to put in some effort and some changes and some habit changes to make it work. It's not just going to come like that. I wish it would. When we look at things we can do on a day-to-day life, sleep comes back. Sleep is one of the biggest de-stressing tools that we have, and it benefits us on so many other levels as well. But additionally, stress can impact sleep. So the two do work in tangent. Time in nature has been clinically proven to help reduce people's feelings of stress and improve people's feelings of well-being. And this goes from a mental health perspective as well. So I cannot encourage time in nature anymore, than I do across my platforms as well. I think people are probably like, okay, I get it now. I love it. And it's such a useful tool. It's free. It'll help with your circadian rhythm because you're going to get out in bright daylight first thing in the morning. It'll help get you moving and get you exercising. So it'll help with stress control. And it's just wonderful to be out there in nature. If you can stick your feet in the grass as well, I'm all for it. Think about actually balancing blood sugars as well across the day. Because like we were talking about, this peak and trough of blood sugars where we don't regulate what we're eating, where we rely on those quick release carbohydrates, so your white breads, your white pastas, your crisps, your biscuits, your cake, Yes, they're delicious. Not going to pretend they're not. But what it does is it will just roller coaster our blood sugars. And with that roller coaster, the stress response kicks off as well. That you can't get away from it. It will kick off too. So in order to support our stress, we need to just support those blood sugars. So going back to what I was saying about really fueling up on a good quality protein, thinking about really filling your plate with loads of veggies and complex carbohydrates. So going for the root vegetables, the whole grains, the wild rice, the quinoas, going back to those, rather than relying on those quick release. They'll make you feel good in a moment, but they will be gone and they will not help with the stress response. And then also think about what you can do in regards to meditation or breath work. If you are good at meditating, then brilliant. Some people really get into it quite quickly. For others, it can be quite challenging because that stress response is so strong. So then I really encourage people to lean on breath work, because you don't have to get into that meditative, relaxed state. I've had moments where I found myself a bit overwhelmed and I've just stopped what I'm doing, I've lied on the floor, and I've focused on the breath. And I do a 6x6 breath. So 6 seconds of breathing in only through the nose, and 6 seconds of breathing out just through the nose. There are many different forms, but this for me, I really like, and I really encourage it. I've seen some really good evidence for it as well. And on the out breath, I really encourage a hum. The hum really helps support our vagal nerve. And this nerve runs from the brain down to the stomach. It's that one that when you get nervous, it triggers you wanting to use the loo. So the humming really helps to tone that nerve, and the benefits are just instant in regards to how you feel instantly calmer, and you haven't had to get into a meditative or yoga-like state at all. And you can just do it for a few cycles for a couple of minutes, and then you can get up and you can carry on again. So these are a couple of really nice tools, as well as staying hydrated. If we don't stay hydrated, got a bottle of water with me, I know you've got yours with you. The body is 60% water. And with that, we are losing a lot of water every day. We sweat, we speak, and we exhale, and therefore we lose water. We might cry, particularly in stressful times. We might be a bit more tearful. We urinate. Water is lost, so we need to replenish it. During times of stress, water is lost quicker. So hydration becomes really important. And actually, with some people, I see a real benefit in just a little pinch of pink Himalayan salt added to the water. It just helps to get the water into our cells. It helps as an electrolyte. And I do mean just a pinch. It helps to get the water into our cells, so it helps us to retain that hydration better.
Yeah, I've heard that from marathon runners, actually, that they use Himalayan salt sometimes. So that makes perfect sense. So many great tips and value in what you shared there. It's tremendous. And I really love this point about getting out into nature as well. If there has been an upside to the last 12, 18 months, it's that everybody's been getting out into nature. Like, we've discovered places around here we never knew existed, right? Because we've only ever driven past them in the past. And that's been a really nice part of it. I think that's been a really beneficial piece. Mm-hmm. And the more you can get some structures into your days, right? Like a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, if you've got a really good solid structure that includes some exercise, and you're being intentional about your days, even if you're not in a work pattern, and then you've got that mindfulness play if you feel yourself going off track, then yeah, really, really good value on that. Thank you. I think that was great. Final piece then, in terms of books you've read or other content that you've consumed, other things that have helped shape your thinking on this topic, what do you recommend on that side?
I have got an absolute favourite that changed my life 3 years ago. And
love it.
And you know what, it's been what's made me want to go into sleep and look at sleep more and help people with it. And I've grabbed it here. Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep. I know lots of people have read it, but I know so many people still haven't. It is incredible. Matthew Walker's spent 20 years studying sleep and studying why on earth do we spend a third of our lives asleep. And he's then put it really beautifully into this book. I did have a load of tabs, but then I lent it to my husband and he found the tabs annoying and took them all out. So I would have been able to grab you a section, but he ruined that one. But that's a wonderful one. I really can't recommend this book enough, Why We Sleep. There's another one here, The Art of Rest. This is actually one that I'm going through at the moment. We have a real rest deficit. just like we have a sleep deficit, we are just not prioritizing them, and they are so fundamental to good health. We struggle to rest. We feel guilty around it, especially when you're in the job hunt, when you're searching for a job. You possibly find it really difficult to think that you should be allowed to rest and take time off. You need to. Hunting for a job, and I'm sure you've said this as well, it is a job in itself. And if you structure your day like it's a job, then even more so, you need to have that downtime. You need to give yourself a chance to rest. So this is another really good one. Rangan Chatterjee recommends this one. He's also got a couple of really lovely books out, 4-Pillar Plan and The Stress Solution. So they're really great ones. And then actually something that I find really inspiring is this guy, Gabor Mate. He really focuses actually a lot on trauma and how trauma really impacts the body. And I see that a lot with client work, that actually it can be trauma moments that then trigger health concerns and symptoms going forward. He's written a couple of lovely books, and one of them here is When the Body Says No. And this is about the fact that if you push yourself too far, the body, and I've talked about this with clients, the body will decide that you're going to rest. So rather than you making a decision about a rest day, the body's going to call it for you, and it's going to be harder to come back from. He does some wonderful YouTube talks as well. This is a really lovely book. And there's a similar one called When the Body Keeps the Score, and that's also really well recommended. So yeah, it's a couple
lovely
of
recommendations. And sadly, everyone's predicting the next pandemic will be a burnout one, and mental health related. So I think everybody needs to be very, very mindful at the moment of these things and to be proactively working on it and spreading the word. So very important conversation to be having. Very quick one. Power naps, yes or no?
Yes. As
Good.
long as...
Correct answer, that's fine. No, there goes. No caveat required.
I'm going to caveat it. As long as your nighttime sleep is also of good quality. If you're power napping because you're not focusing on getting that 8 hours sleep at night, go back to that 8 hours sleep. If you're power napping because you're doing lots of exercise or you're something, or you're in a busy period, then fine, but make sure it's before 3 o'clock, so that it doesn't impact your nighttime sleep. Got it. Sorry, I have to caveat. There's never a black or white answer in my world.
No, that's fine. So it's in addition to rather than instead of is the key takeaway there. Amazing. I feel like I've covered heaps in 30 minutes. It's been so good. If somebody's listening who wants to follow up with you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you or connect with you in some way?
Yeah, great. So I'm available across social media. So on Instagram, I'm Natalie Louise _nutritionist. And on Facebook, I'm Nutrition with Natalie Louise. And then my website is also natalielouisenutrition.com. So feel free to grab me on any of those. I'm always happy to answer any questions. And I try to always fill my social media platforms with things that are topical and that people are asking to hear about. So hopefully follow me on there and you'll find some things helpful.
I'm sure they will, based on this conversation. So please do follow Natalie if you're not already. And just huge thanks for coming on and sparing your time today to share all that knowledge. It was great.
Most welcome. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thanks for coming.
You've been listening to the Career Jump podcast with Andrew MacAskill. For more resources and information, just head over to the Career Jump website at www.execcareerjump.com to supercharge your job search and start making moves. Let's get to work.